Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming here this evening. As usual, obviously, make sure you speak into the microphone. I'm sure you all know this by now. If we could start off then, apologies.
We have apologies from Councillor Hart and Councillor Deering.
Thank you. Regarding the minutes, 18th of February 2025, before us we have the minutes of the meeting. Are members content for me as chair to sign these off? Could I have a proposer? Thank you. And a seconder. Thank you there, David. So I suppose we need to vote on this, even though there's only 4 of us. So those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Chair's announcement. The only thing I've got to say is obviously this is the last meeting, I think, of this side of the elections and whatever. And hopefully we're all going to meet again next year. You're all up for this. So it's been a pleasure this year, and hopefully we can continue it. Declarations of interest. Anyone? No? Okay, thank you. Right, now the first main item, I think this is you, Simon, the internal audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides details of the internal audit work programme for 2025-26. Members are being asked to approve the work programme and note the internal audit strategy. The report itself explains about our planning process, the process we went through, such as linking the programme to the Council's risk register and a series of consultations we had with the senior leadership team. From that emerged the list of audits that are set out in Appendix A of the report. Each entry includes a broad outline of the scope that we intend to cover, although in reality that will be firmed up nearer the time through discussion with the relevant audit sponsor, who is also identified. The list itself isn't necessarily set in stone. If it needs adjusting during the year, we can accommodate that. If there are any sort of emerging issues that present themselves, we can flex the plan. Should that happen, we'll come back to members and let you know through one of our quarterly progress reports that I'm sure you might recall. We have also included our KPIs for the year on page 32, against which we'll also report during the year, so you'll see how the work programme is progressing and what the outcomes of that work is. The internal audit strategy is appended for your information. That's actually been written by the head of the Shared Internal Audit Service, Darren Williams. It sets out our purpose and responsibilities and our resources, which, as you might imagine, mainly consists of staff, and the governance arrangements we have in place over us, such as the internal audit standards. So that's essentially all I've wanted to highlight at this point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Simon. Questions or comments, members? There, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Simon. Just going back to basics, can you just remind us how the topics for audit are decided and by whom and how often they are conducted? Thank you.
We have something which within the profession we rather grandly call the audit universe, which is absolutely anything and everything that you can think of that a local authority does, statutory and discretionary, and almost an A to Z, if you like. And we carry out a risk assessment against those, and the higher the risk, or the higher the inherent risk, the more likely they are to feature in our work programme on a regular basis. The less risky, the less likely. The other determining factors will be the discussions that we have with relevant members of the senior leadership team, rely on their insight and intelligence. They obviously know on a day-to-day basis what's going on within their services, and factor that in as well. There are also what we call a number of topical requirements, things that we like to or have to include coverage of. An example of that might be cyber security, for example. Our profession has highlighted that explicitly in 25-26 as something that we should be looking at. In reality, we've looked at it in previous years as well. There's no particular rhyme or reason as to how frequently something is audited. We might consider things like materiality. So a key financial system, although it might be inherently less risky, because there is good governance and sound systems in control, because of its materiality, we might incorporate it on an annual basis, and we often do. So something like council tax collection or housing benefits administration. Other things, such as refuse collection, there are inherent risks, but they're very different to something like council tax collection. So they may only get looked at once in every 3 years. So it's not an exact science, more of an art, and everything gets thrown in, and what comes out of it at the end is that work programme.
Thank you very much. Hello, yes, Councillor.
Oh, yes, it looks like a very thorough and detailed work programme as usual from you. I noticed that the devolution local government reorganisation is on the reserve list. Is that just on the reserve list because of the lack of detail going forward at the moment? And I'd hope that it's going to have a massive effect on district council, obviously. So I'd hope that would appear on the work programme going forward.
Yeah, that was almost a last minute entry, but the plan itself was largely put together around about December, January. So we added that into the reserve list, and we've done that for all size partners. We did feel it was essentially too early to do anything at this point, so we put it on there. That's perhaps an example of where we might need to amend the plan later in the year if through discussions with senior leaders we decide that we need to do something, or indeed from comments from this committee, we'll flex the plan and incorporate it.
Thank you very much. Any more? Oh, sorry, Nick.
Yeah, just one question around, given the later on in the meeting, we'll be hearing quite a lot around failure of financial reporting, and I wonder whether we would expect to see, or whether we benefit from some form of advisory review maybe later in 25-26 once capacity has been built and process has been improved, to give the committee some assurance around whether that is now robust and fit for purpose. It meets the requirements that we've that have clearly not been met in the past.
I wouldn't suggest that internal audit and external audit are mutually exclusive, if I may speak on our behalf, but we certainly avoid duplicating each other's work. We've got essentially different terms of reference. So I think we'd probably be unlikely to explicitly follow up the work of external audit, other than perhaps if there was the appetite to do so, there might be some oversight of the recommendations that have been made and status update of that. But I would anticipate that would be in place in some shape or form anyway.
Yeah. Just given the sort of significance, materiality of that issue that we've faced, to have some notice, the sort of, or potentially for tweaking the plan as we go through the year, and if later in the year we want some the committee feel that's need for some assurance, we could revisit that. I think it would be a sensible contingency to have, should there be any ongoing concerns from external audit, for example.
Yep, we can make a provision if that's the committee's wish.
Okay, what is it likely to entail from your perspective, a change?
I think we'd inevitably during the course of the year, some of the planned items tend to fall by the wayside for one reason or another. So when I talk about flexing the plan, what that means in reality is something drops out and something else falls within its place. Certainly by the time we get to, say, the autumn, I'd be most surprised if that hasn't happened. Even then, if that hasn't happened, we can make a very conscious decision to substitute one audit for another.
Okay, Brian,
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and Brian Malden, Head of Finance, Section 151 Officer, who started here on the 1st of April this year. I think what I would be proposing would be that when the report in relation to what the member is talking about in the EY report and the recommendations being made, they will be going up to Council at the end of May, and I would propose that there'll be a recommendation in those report that will come back to say that Audit and Governance Committee will obviously monitor the progress of those reports. So it may be a direct report from myself rather than through Simon's internal audit. But again, it might well be picked up as well in later dates around internal audit reports. But I would anticipate there'll be a report from myself letting you know of the updates of where we are with those recommendations during the year.
okay, thank you for that. Any more? David, yeah.
Yes, just a couple of explanatory questions. Are you the CAE, the Chief Audit Executive, or is that someone else?
That's me, yes.
That's you.
Quite
Got
right.
it. Okay, so you're on the hot plate there. I was interested to see that amongst the KPIs you've got client satisfaction with an asterisk, and I'm wondering who the client is in that case. Is that us, or is the? Can you explain? And why is it in there?
It's typically the audit sponsor or the key contact within the service that we're auditing. It's a questionnaire that we issue at the end of all of the audits that we complete. It focuses on things like the delivery of the audit process, whether the auditor behaved in a professional way, whether we were able to accommodate mutually agreeable timeframes for delivery of the audit, and sort of satisfaction with the outcome of the audit and whether it added value to the service.
Thank you. So I think we're probably exhausted ourselves on this. On that basis then, there are two recommendations for this item, detailed on page 21 of the agenda pack. And those recommendations are that members are recommended to approve the proposed East Herts Council internal audit plan for 25-26, and that members are requested to note the SIAS internal audit strategy and provide any comments prior to approval by the SIAS board. Could I ask for a proposer and a seconder, please? Thank you, Geoffrey. Proposer and seconder. Thank you, Sue. Thank you. Could we quickly vote on this then? Those in favour? Hands up. Thank you. That's unanimous. That's carried. External audit completion report for those charged with governance 21-22, 22-23. Debbie, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So rather unusually, this report covers 2 financial years. You would normally receive from us for each financial year an audit plan, an audit results report, which would set out the findings from our audit of the financial statements, and then the auditor's annual report, which would include our VFM commentary and a high-level summary of all of the findings of our work during the year. In effect, this completion report fulfills the requirement for all 3 of those reporting items for both the years 21-22 and 22-23. So following the receipt of this and hopefully your approval of those sets of accounts for 21-22 and 22-23 and the updated annual governance statement at this committee meeting, we should be in a position to actually issue our audit reports on those 2 years before the end of the week, thereby closing our responsibilities in relation to those 2 years audits. I will take the report as read, but I will just highlight some key things to you. So the executive summary of the report sets out some general national context around the backlogging local audit, and as a result of that, the backstop dates that were introduced by the government to basically get local audit back on track and bring audited assurance back up to date rather than looking at historic sets of accounts. Page 7 of the report also includes some local context. And I think that's really important for this committee to note, because those are the issues around the delays to the 21-22 and 22-23 accounts. And in actual fact, those delays probably started around about 2020-21, where we weren't actually able to conclude that audit until March 23, which is obviously significantly after the financial year end for that year. We then immediately moved on to start the 21-22 audit, but 12 months later, we'd still not been able to conclude that audit. And because of those backstop dates and limited audit resources, we moved to issuing a disclaimer on the 21-22 financial statements. And we're in a similar position in relation to 22-23. Both of the 21-22 and 22-23 accounts were also published significantly after the deadline required in the Accounts and Audit Regulations. So what we've done is, as I said, we've moved to a disclaimer opinion. So that means that we are not expressing an opinion on those financial statements. What we have, however, done is we've still done our value for money commentary, though, and we did bring that to this committee in October 24, when we highlighted to you the significant weakness that we'd identified in relation to the arrangements of the production of the financial statements and their publication as required. Linked to that, we are making a statutory recommendation. And I will take you through all of the recommendations, because we've made a number of other recommendations within this report as well, but only the ones related to the accounts production are statutory recommendations. What a statutory recommendation means is that within 30 days of us issuing that recommendation, the council needs to consider it at a full council meeting and basically have a response to that, which I think Brian's already alluded to in his response in terms of saying that that is what will be produced. And the council meeting has already been set for that, and that is within the 30 days required, so that requirement has been met. The report probably includes some items that you might not expect to see. So even though we are issuing a disclaimed opinion, the ISAs, so the auditing standards, still require auditors to undertake certain procedures. And those procedures are our risk assessment procedures to identify what would have been the risks that we would have identified had we undertaken a full audit. So those are set out within the report. We're also required to set materiality levels, and again, we've reported those within this report. The risks are largely similar to what you would have expected to see in previous years, so I'm not going to take you through those because I think they are self-explanatory within the report, but we are required to undertake that. We are also still required to review the annual governance statement and check that that's consistent with our understanding of the council. Following our review of that, we have asked the council to make some changes to that to reflect the weaknesses in the financial statements. Those changes have been made in the version of the AGS that's within your papers for tonight, and so we're comfortable with that now reflects the current understanding and arrangements. Probably just one thing I did want to draw out to you was some points about the minimum revenue provisions. So members of this committee will probably be aware that for a number of years the council was debt-free, and the council has now moved from that position and will have to borrow to fund its capital programme. Our high-level review of the draft financial statements and the MRP policy identified some concerns regarding the consistency of what was noted in the financial statements versus the policy that had been brought to the committee. We therefore asked that that was reviewed and revisited, and I understand that that has happened, and then the calculation has been conveyed as not materially inaccurate. I would note we have done no audit procedures over that, and that's something therefore that your new auditors are likely to want to look at. So I think value for money is probably the key thing to draw your attention to. So within page 34 of the report, we set out our executive summary for the value for money work, and we noted that we identified risks of significant weakness in relation to governance, and that's relation to the accounts processes, as well as improving economy, efficiency and effectiveness. And that was in relation to some significant overspends on some of the council's main capital projects. So Old River Lane and the Hertford Theatre being two of the key ones that we looked at. Having been provided with more information around the capital projects, we are satisfied that although there are significant overspends, those have been clearly reported through, and the reasons for those overspends and increasing costs are understood by the council, and the council has made appropriate decisions to pare back some of those projects where needed. We are therefore satisfied that there is not a significant weakness in the actual arrangements in relation to those schemes that we looked at, but again we would note the importance of keeping those under review. In relation to value for money, as I said, we've included commentary on each of the 3 areas within the report. So we've noted that we have not identified any issues in relation to the Council's financial sustainability, but we have made some recommendations in relation to savings, and we note some of the findings that the peer review that the Council also had undertaken has made some recommendations. So we have 3 recommendations that we've made there. Sorry, 4. So we had the officers need to ensure robust savings plans are in place to deliver and ensure spend is contained within the budgets. Also ensuring that further use of reserve balances is mitigated to ensure financial sustainability. Also taking action to address some of the findings and recommendations from the Finance Peer Challenge continue to be focused on, and then the review of the MRP. So those are all areas that we noted in relation to financial sustainability where we've made recommendations. In relation to governance, the key issue that we've identified is, as I've said, in relation to the financial statements, and that's where we've made, again, further recommendations, the key one of which is a statutory recommendation. And also we've noted that some of the weaknesses identified by internal audit need to be given greater focus to ensure that they are addressed on a timely basis. Probably wasn't a lot more I was going to say. As I've said, we've made the statutory recommendations. So Appendix E of the report includes all of the recommendations we have made. And I think going back to a comment that was made earlier, I would suggest that this committee does have a key role in ensuring that our recommendations are implemented appropriately, and also particularly ensuring that the processes for the production of the financial statements are strengthened significantly. I would note that the 23-24 financial statements are still not prepared and published on the Council's website, and the deadline for you producing 24-25 accounts is the end of June, so not very long off. The backstop date for 24-25 opinions is the end of February next year, 2026. So your new auditors will have a significant challenge because they will have still 2 sets of accounts to get through the audit of to get you back onto a normal timetable or start to move in that direction. So it really is imperative that the Council strengthens the arrangements for the financial statements and ensures a sufficient capacity in the Finance Department to manage that process. As I said, I wasn't going to talk through the recommendations. I think they stand alone, but I think it's important that this committee gets regular updates back from officers in terms of the progress on implementing those recommendations, and that may well be something that your new auditors also look at. Very happy to take any questions or comments on the report.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Questions, comments? Sue?
Thank you. This is a very full report, and I just wondered why we were given so little time to read through it. It arrived on last Thursday and before bank holiday weekend, and it's been a challenge to even get through it. And I just wondered what the reasons for the delay were.
Brian?
First of all, apologies for the obviously delay in coming out. What we wanted to do was to make sure that you had the management responses included within those reports to give you the full, this is the issue, this is what we are doing, so that you can, assess it as a whole rather than, getting first part, not knowing what we are doing until tonight. So this gave you, I appreciate the time was a bit small in being able to digest it all. Obviously, it will be going up to full council in May, so we will have more time to digest it over that time. But yeah, apologies for that.
Thank you, Brian. Sue?
As a follow-up, identifying the role of this committee in the whole process. I know issues were flagged up at a previous meeting that you attended where Stephen Linnett was still part of the council, but we've not been made aware of these difficulties in issuing financial statements that in much detail as committee members, and it's quite a surprise to learn about it, reading about them in this report, and it's quite disappointing as committee members, I'd say.
Okay, so I must admit this it was mentioned, I think, in the September Sorry.
I think it was the October meeting that I came to and raised points, but I think it is worth noting as well that the fact that the accounts had not been to this committee meeting is something that should have been on the work programme for the committee. So the committee should have been aware from the fact that the accounts did not come to the meeting that it was an issue. So it's not necessarily for the external audit to make you aware of that. I think the committee needs to be clear on what falls within your responsibilities in terms of reference, and therefore to ensure that you are getting the assurance that you need and are able to ask the questions. If you haven't seen the accounts, why is it that you haven't seen the accounts?
Well, it's quite difficult because I've been a committee member for 2 years and we haven't been able to take part in that process because we haven't seen the accounts. So it's a chicken and egg, isn't it?
Okay. Does anyone want to add anything to that, or no? It's up to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, I can't talk about what has happened. Obviously, I wasn't here. All what I can try to emphasise is that we do have a plan. We are working towards that in relation to when we are looking to obviously get this signed off tonight. When we're looking to get 23, 24 signed off, and again, that's in the work programme of when that will be coming to this committee for obviously seeing the draft accounts, but also when the proposed accounts will be signed off. Again, it's fluid. It might well move once Azure starts their auditing processes to go through, and obviously we'll, going forward, we'll keep the audit committee abreast with the work programme that we will be obviously making sure kept up to date, so that you do have an indication of when these important deadlines are coming up and when reports will be coming to members.
Thank you, Brian. Any more questions, Jeffrey?
Thank you. Apologies if I misunderstood the reply we got to Councillor Nichols' question about the timing. I think I understood Brian to say that there was a delay whilst officers composed responses to some of the comments made by the auditors, but I can't see those in the report. Am I missing something? Oh, they are in there.
Yeah, they're on pages 77 of the report, on 77, 78, 79 and 80, I believe. They're on the right hand side in the yellow column.
Oh, I beg your pardon, yes. Okay, yes, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any more? Nick?
So just a comment on in terms of the point around knowing what was coming. So having sat on the committee for 18 months, I think we've probably been here 2 years. Is it 2 years? 2 years. A lot of the conversations seem to have been around the fact that we were being told the issue was with the audit. Now it transpires that it wasn't the audit, it was actually the preparation of the financial statements and the information, etc., that's now come through. So this, and hence my comment earlier around the assurance the committee needs to make sure that the underlying process and systems are working. And I accept new officer has arrived literally days into the role, but in order to avoid that happening, it feels like the right thing to do to make sure that the committee is receiving some independent assurance that things are moving in the right direction. So that's sort of what I'd say on that. I just had another point, just in terms of management responses, if I may. Which are great, because it's good to have some firm dates, which I think we've lacked in the past. And the recommendations, the responses say 23-24 accounts will be on the website by the end of this month, which so I suppose I'll be confident. First question, I'll be confident in that happening, and that as a new section 151 officer, receiving the support to make sure that happens. And then must, sort of similar to that, it's just the timeline from April 2025. I think you just heard the backstop for audit is February 26. So how confident are we that we can meet that timeline between publishing the accounts and the auditors doing their work, which of course will be on 2 years worth of accounts, and is maybe not for now, but just sort of understanding the process for how we get to through those 2 years. Do they come together? Do they come separately? So just so we can understand what to expect in the next 12 months.
Yep, so 23-24 accounts. I saw a version of those last week. I had some comments and some suggestions of making some amendments, which are currently being done. So I've seen a version. We are just, I think, just 2 notes away from a complete set. So I'm confident that we should be able to get a version online by the end of April. That then needs to go through a process of being there open to the public to be able to inspect those accounts before obviously Audit can then go ahead and obviously start looking at closing it down. Now obviously my understanding is they've done some initial work around the value for money, but obviously they can't do their comprehensive part until EY has completed their 22-23 accounts and 21-22. So once that is signed off this week, we'll then obviously be in contact again with Paul, who is the new director at Audit, who will be coming along to future meetings to members. So my current plan is that we'll get this published, we'll go through the appropriate inspection period, and then we'll be looking to get Audit to come along September, October to get those accounts disclaimed and obviously signed off. And then obviously, as Debbie's indicated, the backstop for 24-25 is February 26. Again, I'll be looking to work towards that. I'm not going to say we're going to achieve that, but we're going to work towards that. We are working towards publishing the 24-25 by the end of June. But again, as the report highlighted from EY, that there are capacity issues within the team, within the finance team, which again, I'm addressing with obviously Helen, the CEO, and obviously with the portfolio holder, Carl, to make sure we've got the necessary resources in place. It's not just obviously resources, there's obviously a skill set as well, making sure there's appropriate individuals who are able to carry out their parts of it. So again, it's an achievable objective, but it's obviously quite a challenging objective to make sure we are able to complete it in line with those deadlines. But again, I'm working closely with Alison, who's the Deputy 151, to make sure that we are trying our best to achieve those. And obviously we'll work with Helen and with Carl over the coming weeks and months here to say whether we have the appropriate resources or whether we need additional resources to come in to support during those processes. And obviously we can report back to Audit Committee in the future of how we're getting on with those.
Thank you, Brian. Nick, were you?
Yeah, that's reassuring to hear all that. With the new auditors coming in to make sure that they feel able to report to every one of these meetings over the next 12 months to keep us abreast of progress. You mentioned September. I know there's be a meeting or two between now and then. It'll be good to have, whether they're here or whether they can give us some assurance where they're at and how things are progressing. That would be helpful.
I mean, in a similar way that I've got previous experiences working with Debbie, I've also got previous experiences working with Paul at Audit, where I've done it at my previous organisation. So I've got that working relationship already going with obviously both Debbie and obviously with Paul. So that part of it will be already started, and I've already had discussions with him. Whether they attend every meeting will be down to them to determine that. But again, we can feedback to say that the committee would be keen for some kind of update at each meeting to let them know where they are with the audits, if that's what the committee wants.
And sorry, just before Sue, 1 second. Nick, is what you're saying, suggestion is that maybe just flashing up on the screen at the meeting, the website, so that we can see and evidence ourselves. Is that the sort of thing you was saying?
I hadn't thought of that, but I suppose it's just making sure we are kept abreast of the progress in terms of officers preparing and process of getting the capability in place, as well as the progress with the audit of the products. So it's the best way of doing that, I guess, is making sure we haven't updated each meeting, but I accept it doesn't require the as a director or partner to attend. But I think I would hope that they would raise any issues so that we would be aware. So it doesn't in 12 months' time or in January next year or February next year, and we're told that they haven't had the accounts yet or the information flow is not being great, that it won't be a surprise. So that's really where I'm coming from. Yeah.
Certainly. Thank you. Sue. Sorry, David.
I mean, it is a concern that some of the major problems identified are a lack of communication between the S151 officer and the previous CEO, and that those difficulties are only coming to light in this report. And it's concerning that there weren't any checks and balances in place to make sure that relationship was robust. And, you know, it's a statutory requirement to have a statements of accounts, and the fact that wasn't coming forward because of communication issues is a concern. And I'd hope that moving forward, we've got new staff in place, and there be a change of planning and relationships going forward that we avoid that happening again. I'd hope. It sounds hopeful.
Just to give you an example, one of the things that we are implementing and we'll be about to start is this. You might have heard of the Golden Triangle. It's again, it's called slightly different name here, but it's where this chief executive, the CFO, and the monitoring officer will meet each month to go through governance issues. So again, these kind of things will be picked up by those meetings, and obviously I will keep Carl abreast of the updates of those meetings, so he's aware of what's going on for a member perspective. But again, you know, that's the kind of things we are implementing to make sure that going forward, we are able to obviously monitor and control that within officers before bringing it to members' attention as well.
And also, I think bottlenecks were identified in the process, and us to have more committee meetings during the year would help have checks and balances from a member's point of view as well. I think we've mentioned that before, so that would be a good way forward as well.
Certainly. Thank you, Sue. Yeah. David.
Yeah, well, it's lovely to see you here, Debbie. We've missed you. And I think the thing that I miss from this report actually is a simple spreadsheet calendar, which is, Martin says, it'd be quite useful to see at every meeting so that we have now a clear sense of what is due when, and then which of those dates are actually achieved. Maybe that is buried in the support report here somewhere, but a summary, an executive summary of the dates on which we are told you are gunning for delivery of these accounts. Is that possible?
I'll try and break that down into different ways. So you would have received a plan for 21-22 because we did complete a good chunk of work on the 21-22 audit before we had to basically stop. Yeah, so 21-22, the audit plan that would have been brought to this committee would have had a clear timeline, and we started that audit work in March. I have to check my years here. So that started in March 23 with the aim of completing by the end of July or June or July 23. March 24, we were still not able to conclude the audit, and that's the point when we moved to sort of the disclaimer position. So I would imagine that your new auditors would have a timeline that they would include in their audit plan. It's fairly standard to say when they're planning to do their planning work, their interim, their year end, and the date they're working to. But I think the work programme which this committee will have is also a key thing that you need to have, because you know the dates of the accounts and audit regulations and the date the draft accounts should be prepared by, and the date that you'll be working to with your auditors for the IC 260, so the audit results report and the final reporting. So I think if you get that planned out and monitor and track that, that will take you a good way forward. So this report doesn't have any such dates in like that, because that's not the purpose of this report. And we didn't do a plan for 22-23 because those accounts were not actually produced until November 24. So a good over 12 months after the actual financial year end to which they're related. And I think just to pick up on the point of communication, because I think that is really important, and I think that had broken down. So we were trying for a period of months to try to get a call with the Section 151 officer at the time to discuss the problems and the issues. We got nowhere. We then tried with the chief exec at the time, so not Helen. And in the end, I had a call with Councillor Adams because we couldn't basically get any response to our reach out to try to contact to discuss the problems and the issues and how we were going to move them forward. So I would say I've had much more positive communication subsequently with Helen and with Brian, who I've worked with for a number of years at a number of different councils. And again, we've had a good relationship with Alison, I would say, over the period. So I think with your new auditors, it's a fresh opportunity for a fresh start. But I think just make sure you've got some of those basics in place and make sure that as an audit committee, you have your expectations really clear and you're monitoring that and you're getting independent assurance. But we're already seeing more positive responses in terms of where things are. But you do have a lot to catch up on. You will have 3 years disclaimed opinions, and with local government reorganisation coming in, it takes some time to move from a disclaimed position, particularly when you've got the longer the gap is between an actual audit having been done. So I'm sure your new auditors will come and discuss at length with you what the options are for that and how long it will take to clear and try to get back to normal. But that may be not possible by the time that reorganisation occurs, so which will be a challenge.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, it does sound like a sort of three-ring circus that we're dropping ourselves into here. And I think the more that you, Brian, and Michelle can, create simple graphics to show us where we are and where we need to be, the more helpful that would be at every meeting. So that we're looking at something that is consistent rather than, 390 pages of new stuff every meeting.
Certainly, yeah. Brian.
I mean, can I propose that we include that onto the work programme at the bottom? Obviously, the work programme will show what coming to what's report, but at the bottom we can have a table just showing you in relation to statement of accounts of when they are due and when we are proposing to bring them along to each of those meetings. So it gives you an indication of are we on track or not. That should be quite straightforward to do.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah. Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, it obviously sounds like there's an emerging plan to move forward, but I'm just interested in sort of briefly what are the capacity of resources being put in place to actually deliver that?
So I think obviously we've got individuals who are key to the concept of reducing statement of accounts, and it's about making sure that they've got capacity to be able to focus their attention on those statement of accounts process rather than getting caught up in almost BAU, business as usual kind of activities. So what I'm looking to do at the moment is to get someone in on a short-term contract to support us in that initial process. What Helen's also obviously looking to do is to obviously look at the structure of the finance team along with all the other structures within the council to make sure we are fit for purpose. We've got the right skill sets in the right places. So again, that piece of work will also be undertaken shortly with myself and Alison, looking at what we've got in the team, what do we need, is it enough resources, and obviously we'll then come back to members to say that this is the potential what we need, whether that will be more staff or whether it just means that we need to realign how staff are operating and trying to be more digitalised and make it more efficient in that sense. I don't know at the moment. That piece of work is still to be undertaken, but I'm clear in what I need to get to. It's just about how we get to there.
Thank you. Are you okay? Any more questions or comments? No? Okay. Well, on that basis, the recommendation before us, there's two recommendations. To receive and make any comments on the external auditor's completion report for 21-22 and 22-23, and to approve the 21-22, 22-23 statement of accounts. So I'm after a proposer and a seconder. Proposer, thank you, Sue. Seconder, David, thank you. Take a vote. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Right. On that basis, do you want to hang around, Debbie, or? Okay. So, sorry, Simon. Do you want to? You stay for that. It's the same with you, Simon. You okay? Yeah. Okay. So I think Brian, again, this is for you. The approval of the annual governance statement 21-22 and 22-23.
So yes, this is part of the documents that will be part of the statement of accounts that will be published on our website. The AGS is a review of the effectiveness of the internal controls, i.e. the council's governance arrangements. The 21-22 and the 22-23 has already been to this committee previously in draft format, and there's been a number of changes since that, and now obviously we're presenting the final report. As Debbie indicated earlier, we obviously need to update this to reflect what was in the EY report. So what we've done is we've added in a new section on the internal audit under insurance statement, which again has been all previously been to this committee for sign off of those appropriate years. And then we've also included the governance issues picked up in the EY reports. And obviously we've also updated where we are with those action points around those potential governance issues. And that's about it, I think, for that particular one, Chair.
Thank you very much, Brian. Questions, comments? Anyone? Nick?
So the in the key areas of improvement and the recommendations and the updates at the back. So the names of officers who are taking those forward are those who have now moved on, I think. So that, yeah. And
So if the action's been done, it would have been done by those individuals, such by their names might be on there still.
and the way this works, are there any that haven't been done and roll forward into the next year? So when we look at the 23-24 one, any outstanding from these years will be in the 23-24 one, which I know is on the agenda.
Yeah, you'll find that what's on the 23-24 AGS, which is on the next item, will be very similar to what's on the previous twos, plus anything else that's came out in 23-24 year.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any more? No? Okay, you've done well there, Brian. Thank you very much. So the recommendations for the committee are that the members review and comment on the updated annual governance statement for 21-22. That members review and comment on the updated annual governance statement for 22-23. That members acknowledge the statutory recommendations that the external auditors have made. That members ensure that the statutory recommendations are presented at a meeting of the full council within 30 days of the EY presenting the report to members of the audit and governance. Can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Sue, thank you. And Jeffrey, seconded, thank you. Could I have a show of hands, those in favour? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. That is carried. Right. So anyone want to depart, then feel free to do so. Thank you very much, Debbie. Thank you. Point 8 now. The draft annual governance statement for 23-24.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, very short really. So this is just a follow on from the previous two AGSs. It's been updated to reflect what was in the EY report. This is a draft format. We have sent a copy of to alert our auditors for 23-24, and obviously they will obviously review that as part of their value for money audit. and obviously there might well be some changes between now and when the final version comes up later this year as part of the statement of accounts for 23-24. But that's about it, really, Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Questions or comments from anyone? Oh, go on then, Nick.
Sorry. So this is the report that refers to the breakdown in the relationship between the CEO and the Section 151 officer. And it talks about, extends the breakdown not being communicated to or disclosed to the wider leadership team, SIAS and others. I think it's fair to say that wasn't communicated to this committee. And I wonder whether that should, this document is a public, does it become a public document? So, and I wonder whether it ought to be made clear that because we didn't have any indication that was the case. So that was.
Thank you, Nick. Do you want to respond or just comment? No, that's not a problem. Any more questions, comments? Raised eyebrows?
Sorry, Jack. Just one to follow up too. Okay. The way the report's constructed, it talks about all of the controls in place for all the good stuff that goes on, and at the back there's 4 pages of the improvements needed. So it sort of, and as you go through, everything sounds perfect, and it talks about financial management as well within the core of the body of the report, and it all sounds okay. And then you get to the back and you hear about not publishing accounts. So I don't know, it just felt a little weighted towards perfection at the front, not recognising some of the weaknesses that were then tagged on the back. But that's just a view, and I'm not suggesting we necessarily need to change it. But there are some bullet points in the front section where arguably adding a little bit more to say it wasn't perfect might be a fairer representation.
No, that's a fair comment, I think. Yeah, Nick. Thank you.
I'd like to agree with that.
Thank you, Sue. Yeah. Okay. On that basis, then there are 2 recommendations that members review and comment on the draft annual governance statement for 23-24, and that members note that it is anticipated that when the completion report is presented for 23-24 by the new external auditors, assets, it will also include the same statutory recommendations that have been included in the completion report covering 21-22 and 22-23 by EY, and that the 23-24 completion report will also have to be presented at the meeting of the full council within 30 days of assets providing or presenting the report. Could I please have a proposer and a seconder? Proposer, thank you, Jeff. Seconder, thank you, Sue. Could we have a vote on that, please? Those 4, put your hands up. Thank you. That's unanimous, and that is carried. So we're rattling through these now. Audit and governance work programme. I think this is a final item. Wow, you've got plenty of time now. So I assume, Brian, you want to spend a few minutes on that? Cheers.
So this is the current work programme in relation to the coming financial year for Audit and Governance Committee. Again, it is a starter based on what previously been to this committee, and obviously members feel there's other reports need to come along, and obviously we can have that discussion. I will also be having a discussion with the chair shortly around the number, frequency of these meetings and whether that's adequate or whether we need to revise that in the coming year. So, for example, I would have expected to see something around end of July time, which would then give you the opportunity to see the outturn report for the previous financial year, i.e. in July this year, you should in theory get the 24-25 provisional outturn report whereas at the moment it's penciled in for September because that's the next meeting after May. So again, those kind of things we'll need to look at whether we'll be able to achieve it this year or not, because obviously it's not far off now, July. We're not sure, but something we can look at longer term to make sure that the structured or the time, the frequency of these meetings fits in with the requirements of the audit committee, around the statement of accounts and so forth. I think the other thing I wouldn't mind just bringing up is around the training requirements of this committee going forward. And obviously, is there any training needs that members are looking for going forward? So I'm anticipating they'll probably get SIAS training, SAPS training from on internal audit and anti-fraud. I presume you get some training around risk management or around treasury management. But is there any other kind of training requirements in relation to your needs, in relation to what you need to carry out your function as audit committee members?
Thank you, Brian. Any comments or questions, Sue?
The question of meeting regularity has come up several times before, and looking at the programme, there's a lot on each agenda, isn't there? And it is difficult to get through that, which means you're not fulfilling your function properly, doesn't it? So I'd agree that perhaps looking at a July meeting and building that into the programme of meetings would be a good idea. On the question of training, I don't know what training I need, but I feel that we haven't had a lot. So any suggestions you have what that will be relevant and make us more effective as committee members would be much appreciated.
I think there's a key ones, as I mentioned already, around internal audit, understanding, what the report is showing you, making sure you understand what that information is, around statement of accounts, not necessarily training, but, making sure that you get information to understand what's in those accounts. So, what I would be proposing that in future sign-off accounts, you'll get a presentation in some format just to give you a high level understanding of what the figures is representing, and you understand some understanding of that. In relation to treasury management, which is obviously one of your key functions, you need to make sure you understand what the TMSS represents, the MRP policy, minimum revenue provision policy, understand what that represents, because obviously they are key indicators that you are here on behalf of the council to approve and recommend to council to approve as part of the budget process. And then obviously there's risk management is another one that you may want to be able to understand a bit more around, what is requirements from audit committee members around risk management and what's your function in that.
Thank you. David?
Yes, just may I echo Councillor Nichols' feeling that we don't really know what the trainings are that we need, but obviously the things that you raise are things that we are aware of. And also, as Debbie was talking there about a disclaimer opinion, I do understand what that means. What I don't understand is what the implications of a disclaimer opinion is for the long-term viability of the council. And those are the kind of areas, Brian, that I think if you could help us understand. Does a disclaimer opinion mean that we're, committed to utter darkness and hellfire forever because we haven't produced the proper accounts, or is there a way of rectifying that in the future?
I would say that it's not that because we haven't produced accurate accounts. I think you probably find our accounts are in line with international financial reporting standards. It's more that we were unable to complete the audit within the backstop arrangement. And obviously members will probably be aware it's not just an East Herts issue, there's a national issue around the local government audits. So again, you're not alone. Yes, you might be alone in that. There's only a handful that not achieved the backstops, but probably 80% of the local authorities have got disclaimers in and will have disclaimers in. As Debbie said, I'm anticipating, based on what Azerts has told me in my previous organisation, that it will take probably 3 to 4 years for that to unwind in the whole process, for them to get assurance around that. Now, obviously, there'll be bits that we can do straight away around valuations of our assets, which we do understand here. We do it each year anyway. So again, the auditors can give assurance that what we've got in our assets are accurately valued. So again, that can be ticked off easily. The triangulation of pension will be happening shortly. So again, once that's been done and been put through the accounts, that will give the auditors assurance. I think the area that causes them the most concern, and again, Paul can probably talk to you about this a bit more when he comes along, is around the balances and the reserves and how they can get assurance that what is in the accounts are correct based on what they can see. Obviously, that means that they'll need to go back a number of years to understand that. And that's the piece of work that the sector, as in the audit sector, is still trying to understand how they can quantify and how they can measure that to make sure they can give them assurances going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any, oh, sorry, Mark then.
Yeah, almost a bit of a follow-up, maybe something around or a reminder of the role of external audit in terms of, what is their role, how it perhaps differs from the internal audit, and what they require from the council, and the sort of the timeframes that they'd be looking for information, and therefore that we can get in the information and reports as well. So just a reminder of their, and as they're quite new, they might be happy to walk us through that.
Thank you very much. Nick?
Yeah, so in mention risk and rolling back 6-9 months, we were seeing regular risk registers, and the risk registers have been improved to an extent where it was becoming more succinct and focused. For various reasons, I guess capacity wise, we haven't seen that. There's no risk register on the agenda today. I see it's on the going forward. So really encourage a simple, regular report on what the key risks are. And we talked before about then we were able to use that to almost look ahead at the schedule of reports that we might wish to see or have on the forward look, so that the risky stuff is coming forward. So we look at the risk register, something's looks a bit risky, okay, it's coming, we're going to get a report on that in due course. So whilst there's a lot of standing stuff we have to see, and I recognise that, to find the time, and this might be where having extra couple of meetings to be able to focus on those risky areas in a little bit more detail. So, for example, a report on a key project that is running into challenging schedule or cost issues would be a very sensible conversation to be had. So I really value that, and we were making good progress last year, but it's sort of dropped away a bit. So really encourage that risk reporting and link into that forward look in terms of what's coming to the committee.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Nick. Do you want to comment, or are you okay with that? That's good, excellent. Okay, well, Jeffrey.
Thank you. Well, just echoing comments already made, and certainly, I'm conscious that I've raised this point virtually every meeting about the work programme and often the weight of the agendas that we tend to see, and making the point that perhaps not acting as effectively as we could do because of the amount of work we have to get through within each meeting. And if we're going to add training into this agenda as well, then obviously that puts additional pressure on. So again, I think as has been suggested, and we mentioned this in the past, whether the calendar could be reviewed so that the work is divided a little bit more or spread across a couple more meetings maybe, and also at the time of those meetings fit better with the issuing of reports. For example, I mean, I think we've had quite long delays in the past, through no one's fault, but just the way things have worked out with things like the annual outturn report or the quarterly outturn forecast, and when we've looked at that some months after the end of that quarter. So that was one point. And just a reminder, of course, this year when we considered the budget, we did have a shared scrutiny committee to look at the budget, which I thought was very effective, and I just wondered whether that could be considered again for the budget when we look at it next year.
Certainly, thank you. Do you know about the shared?
That has been raised with me. I think probably a good point that we can take away at leadership team to try to understand whether that something we could do going forward. But yeah, it would make sense to have a joint one, I would have thought, but we can come back and confirm that.
Certainly, we've got some time on that. Yeah. Any more? More questions? No? You all okay? On that basis then? There are 2 recommendations for this item, which is detailed on page 51 of the agenda pack. And those recommendations are to approve the work programme as set out in the report, and to specify any training requirements. And I think we've discussed both of those. Could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Proposer Sue, thank you. And a seconder? David, thank you very much. Hands, those in favour? That's unanimous and carried. So thank you very much. Urgent items, yes. No urgent items. Thank you very much. Point of principle there. So on that note, at 6 minutes past 8, it's very early. I consider this meeting closed. Thank you.